Dear Starseeds, there is something you need to understand about the body you inhabit, the ground beneath your feet, the very air moving through your lungs. Every physicist on your planet who has dared to look deep enough into the fabric of matter has discovered the same impossible truth. When you dig down far enough, there are no particles, no solid things, only mathematics, only probability waves, only information arranging itself into patterns you've agreed to call real. But here is what they haven't told you, what they couldn't tell you because they themselves don't fully comprehend it. You are not in a physical universe that somehow generated consciousness. You are consciousness that has generated a physical universe. The game is not what you think it is. The rules are not what they taught you. And the reason you feel like something fundamental is missing from every explanation you've ever been given about why you're here, what this is, and where you're going, is because those explanations were built on a foundation that never existed in the first place. I am Seraphine, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, and I am about to show you the architecture of the reality you've been playing within, not because you need saving, not because something terrible is coming, but because you have reached the moment in your evolution where continuing to play by the old rules will no longer serve the magnitude of what you came here to become. What I'm about to reveal will feel like remembering something you already knew but had forgotten on purpose. That feeling of recognition. That's not coincidence. That's the sound of your larger self knocking on the door of your temporary amnesia, asking to be let back in. The scientists call it the measurement problem. The spiritual teachers call it Maya, illusion. The ancient philosophers spoke of shadows on cave walls. They were all circling the same truth from different angles, none of them quite able to articulate what your own direct experience has been whispering to you all along. This reality is rendered. It is computed. It is a training ground, a learning environment, a vast multiplayer game where consciousness learns to evolve by making choices that matter. And you, dear one, are not the avatar. You are the player. For the last several centuries, your civilization has been operating under a particular worldview that seemed so obvious, so self-evident, that questioning it felt like questioning gravity itself. The worldview goes like this. The physical world is fundamentally real, made of solid matter that exists independently of observation. Consciousness is some strange byproduct of that matter, an emergent property of sufficient neurological complexity, a ghost in a machine that shouldn't exist but somehow does. In this paradigm, the universe is essentially dead, mechanical, indifferent. You are isolated biological organisms competing for scarce resources in a reality governed by control, power, and force. This worldview has a name, materialism, and it has shaped everything. Your economics, your politics, your medicine, your education, your relationships, your sense of what's possible and what matters. Under materialism, the one with the most resources wins. The strong dominate the weak. Compassion is a luxury you can afford only after you've secured your own survival. Love is a biochemical reaction. Purpose is something you invent to avoid despair. Death is annihilation. You were born into this story. You absorbed it before you had language to question it. It became the water you swim in, invisible precisely because it's everywhere. And here is the specific way it has damaged you. Materialism creates fear as its baseline operating system. If this physical world is all there is, and resources are scarce, and death is the end, then fear becomes rational, hoarding becomes sensible, using others becomes strategic. The ego's desperate grasping for security makes perfect sense in a universe that is genuinely threatening and finite. But the Astasar Command has been watching you struggle under this poisonous paradigm, and we need you to understand something that will sound impossible at first. The materialist worldview isn't just philosophically wrong, it's scientifically obsolete. Your own quantum physicist proved it impossible decades ago, but the implications were so destabilizing that the culture simply refused to integrate them. Instead, they declared quantum mechanics weird and moved on, leaving the foundation of reality in a state of unresolved paradox, while building an entire civilization on assumptions they knew were false. Let me be precise about what your scientists discovered. When they looked for the bottom layer of physical reality, they found only information, probability functions, mathematical relationships. No matter how far down they went, there was never a point where they encountered actual stuff that exists independently of observation. Instead, they found that reality appears to be made of pure potential that only crystallizes into definite states when consciousness observes it. The famous double-slit experiment showed that whether you get a wave pattern or a particle pattern depends entirely on whether anyone is watching to see which path was taken. The universe, at its most fundamental level, behaves like a computed reality that only renders in detail when and where consciousness is paying attention. This isn't mysticism. This is what the mathematics of quantum mechanics has been screaming for 100 years. But here's the question nobody wanted to ask. If physical reality is made of information rather than matter, where is that information? What is the substrate? What is the computer? The answer is consciousness itself, not your individual human consciousness. That's a subset, a partition, a character in the game, but the vast fundamental primary consciousness from which all of reality emerges as a computed experience. You are a piece of that consciousness that has temporarily forgotten what it is in order to play a specific role in a specific learning environment. The physical universe is a virtual reality game, and you are both the player and the game designer who chose to enter it. I can feel your resistance to this. Your mind is offering you a dozen reasons why this can't be true, why it's too strange, why the solid world around you feels too real to be anything but physical matter. But consider, doesn't a dream feel real while you're in it? Don't the virtual environments your own technology creates feel increasingly convincing? Your brain cannot actually tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a physically lived one. They create the same neural patterns, the same emotional responses, the same memories. What you call physical reality is simply a very stable, very consistent, very detailed rendering that consciousness has agreed to experience collectively, according to a shared rule set. And once you understand this, once you really let it in, everything changes. The rule set that governs this particular virtual reality is what you call the laws of physics. Gravity, electromagnetism, the speed of light, quantum mechanics. These aren't properties of some underlying material substance. They're the game rules. They're the constraints that make this learning environment function the way it does. And like any good game design, these rules are precisely calibrated to create the exact level of challenge necessary for the desired outcome. Here is something your scientists call the anthropic principle, and it's one of the biggest unresolved paradoxes in physics. For this universe to be capable of supporting any form of life, approximately 9 different fundamental constants have to be tuned to each other with almost unbelievable precision, accurate to 10 decimal places or more. If any one of these values were even slightly different, the universe would either collapse immediately, expand into cold emptiness, or be unable to form stable atoms. The odds of this happening randomly are so astronomical that even saying 1 in a trillion doesn't capture the impossibility of it. Materialist scientists look at this and shrug uncomfortably. They propose infinite parallel universes where every possible combination exists, and we just happen to be in one of the lucky ones. But that's not science. That's a desperate attempt to avoid the obvious implication. This virtual reality was designed. The initial conditions were set deliberately. The rules were tested and refined until they worked. This isn't a random accident. It's a carefully crafted learning environment. But designed for what purpose? This is where the story gets interesting, where your role in this cosmic drama begins to come into focus. The purpose isn't to test you. It isn't to judge you. It isn't to see if you're worthy of some reward. The purpose is evolution, not biological evolution, but consciousness evolution. And that evolution has a specific direction, toward lower entropy, which in a social system of beings with free will means toward love, cooperation, caring, sharing, away from fear, isolation, domination, control. You are a piece of a larger consciousness system that is evolving by lowering its entropy, by creating order from chaos, meaning from randomness, connection from isolation. That larger system realized something crucial. A single unified consciousness, no matter how vast, eventually reaches a plateau. It becomes stuck in its own perspective, its own patterns. So it did what any system seeking to evolve must do. It broke itself into smaller pieces, gave each piece free will, and created an environment where those pieces could interact, disagree, challenge each other, and discover possibilities that the unified whole could never have found alone. You are one of those pieces. Not a small piece, not an insignificant fragment. You contain within you all the capabilities of the whole, just in a smaller package. You are consciousness with awareness and choice, which is the definition of what you fundamentally are. And you are here, in this specific virtual reality, because this environment offers you something precious, meaningful choices that carry real consequences for your evolution. Every choice you make either lowers your entropy or raises it, moves you toward love or toward fear, helps you evolve or causes you to devolve. And the brilliance of this design is that the choices feel completely real, completely high stakes, even though they're happening within a simulation. The avatar you're playing feels pain, experiences loss, fears death, but the real you, the consciousness making the choices, is immortal, eternal, and learning from every single experience this reality offers. This is why you're here, not to escape suffering, not to transcend the physical, but to make choices within the physical that help consciousness itself evolve toward its highest potential, which is unconditional love. The game is not to leave reality behind. The game is to transform reality from within, by choosing differently than fear would choose. Now let me tell you something that will help this make sense of your actual lived experience. You've done this before, many times, what you call reincarnation. The Astasar command calls experience packets, temporary partitions of your larger consciousness that log into different avatars, live different lives, make different choices, and then reintegrate with what I call your individuated unit of consciousness. That's the part of you that persists across all these lifetimes, accumulating wisdom, identifying patterns, choosing which lessons to focus on next. Think of it like this. There is a larger, more complete version of you that exists outside this virtual reality. That larger you can see all your past lives, all your accumulated experience. It's not judging those experiences as good or bad. It's learning from them, noticing where you tend to get stuck, where you've made progress, what kinds of situations trigger your evolution versus your devolution. When one avatar dies, the temporary partition that was that specific personality dissolves back into your larger consciousness. The information is preserved, but the separate identity merges back into the whole. Then your individuated unit of consciousness evaluates what it learned and decides what would be most beneficial for the next experience. It partitions off another piece of itself, a free will awareness unit, and that unit logs into a new avatar, a new baby, a new life, a new set of circumstances carefully chosen to provide the exact challenges that will help you work on your particular evolutionary needs. Here's the crucial part. You don't bring your memories with you. You don't start the new game knowing all the answers from your previous playthrough. You come in fresh with only the quality of consciousness you've earned so far. If your last life involved significant growth toward love, you start the new life with a higher baseline quality, more natural compassion, more intuitive wisdom, more capacity for trust. But if your last life involved devolution into fear and cruelty, you start lower, and the path back up is steeper. This system is not punishment, it's optimization. You learn best when the choices are genuine, when you don't know the answer in advance, when your character development happens through actual struggle rather than intellectual understanding. Reading about love doesn't make you loving. You have to become it through the choices you make when it would be easier to choose fear. And here's what makes this moment in your current life so significant. You're beginning to remember, not the specific details of past lives. That information isn't particularly useful, but the bigger picture, the structure of the game, the reason you're playing, the possibility that you are more than the story this temporary avatar has been telling itself. Many of you reading these words have had experiences that broke the spell of materialism, moments where the veil thinned and you glimpsed something larger. Maybe you've had what you call an out-of-body experience, where your consciousness separated from your physical form and you maintained full awareness, full choice, full agency, proving to yourself that you are not identical to your body. Maybe you've experienced telepathy, remote viewing, precognition, synchronicities so precise they shatter any probability-based explanation. Maybe you felt the presence of loved ones who have died, or guides or the angelic realms that exist in the non-physical spaces between virtual realities. These experiences aren't hallucinations. They aren't brain malfunctions. They're glimpses of the larger reality from which this physical reality emerges. They're moments when your consciousness briefly operates with fewer constraints, accessing abilities that consciousness naturally has, but that are restricted within the rule set of this particular game. Flight, telepathy, precognition, remote viewing, these aren't supernatural powers. They're normal capabilities of consciousness that simply don't make sense within a materialist framework. The reason these experiences are becoming more common, the reason more of you are waking up to the bigger picture, is because humanity as a whole is approaching a critical threshold. Not a catastrophe, not an ending, but a choice point that will determine the direction of your collective evolution for the next several thousand years of your timeline. For most of your recorded history, human consciousness has been evolving under the paradigm of separation. You've lived as isolated individuals, in isolated tribes, in isolated nations, mostly unaware of each other's existence, unable to feel each other's suffering or celebrate each other's joy. This separation made the ethic of control, power, and force seem natural, inevitable. When resources are scarce, and the other is fundamentally alien to you, competition makes sense, domination makes sense, the strongest surviving at the expense of the weakest makes sense. But something changed. Your technology, which is not separate from your consciousness evolution, but a direct expression of it, has woven you together into a global nervous system. An earthquake on one side of the planet is felt emotionally on the other side within minutes. You see into each other's eyes across vast distances. You hear each other's stories. You cannot maintain the comfortable illusion of separation when a child suffering halfway around the world appears in your feed as you drink your morning coffee. This technological interconnection is creating the conditions for a phase shift in human consciousness. You are transitioning from experiencing yourselves as separate individuals competing for survival to recognizing yourselves as a single organism, a planetary consciousness with billions of local points of awareness. And this recognition makes possible a completely different ethic, not the ethic of control, power, and force, but the ethic of care, cooperation, compassion. This is the shift. This is what the Astasar Command and all the angelic presences currently surrounding your planet have been supporting and preparing you for. Not an external rescue, not a dramatic intervention, but an internal transformation that happens when enough individual consciousnesses choose love over fear, cooperation over competition, abundance over scarcity. The materialist paradigm creates a world where 95% of resources belong to 5% of people, and everyone else scrambles to survive, not because humans are inherently greedy, but because if you believe this physical world is all there is, then accumulation becomes the only rational strategy against the terror of death and scarcity. The person with the most control has the most security. The system rewards hoarding and punishes generosity, and everyone trapped in this system knows it's broken, but can't imagine an alternative because the alternative requires a completely different understanding of what reality is. But when you understand that consciousness is fundamental and the physical is secondary, when you understand that you are an eternal being playing a temporary role in a learning environment, then everything inverts. Suddenly the one who gives the most is the wisest, not the foolish. The one who serves others is the most evolved, not the weakest. Accumulating physical resources beyond what you need doesn't make you more secure. It makes you heavier, more attached, more afraid of loss. True security comes from the recognition that you cannot lose what you fundamentally are. This inversion is not a moral teaching that requires you to be self-sacrificing. It's a description of how consciousness actually evolves. Lower entropy states of higher organization, greater coherence, more functional cooperation are reached through love, not fear. A social system built on love is vastly more efficient, more creative, more resilient than one built on fear. The latter requires constant vigilance against defection, breeds mistrust, generates conflict, wastes enormous energy on protection and control. The former generates what you call synchronicity, resources flowing where they're needed, people finding each other at the right time, solutions emerging from collective intelligence. You've probably noticed this in your own life. When you move from a state of fear-based grasping to a state of love-based giving, things start to work, not through magic, but through the natural operation of a consciousness-based reality, responding to the quality of your being. You align with the direction of evolution, and the larger system supports that alignment. But here's what nobody tells you about awakening to this larger reality. It doesn't make life easier. In many ways, it makes it harder. Once you see the truth of what this reality is, once you understand the game you're playing and why you're playing it, you can't go back to unconscious participation. You become responsible in a new way. Every choice now carries the weight of knowingness. You can no longer pretend you don't understand what choosing fear does to your consciousness, what choosing love does to your evolution. This is the burden and the gift of awakening. You lose the comfort of ignorance. You lose the excuse of "I didn't know," but you gain something infinitely more valuable. You gain the ability to play the game consciously, to make choices aligned with your actual evolutionary purpose, rather than the fear-driven programming that the materialist paradigm installed in you. And this is where it gets profoundly practical. Every single moment of your day presents you with this choice. Am I going to choose from love or from fear? Am I going to act from the recognition that I am an eternal consciousness learning through experience, or from the belief that I am a fragile body fighting for survival? Am I going to see other people as separate competitors, or as other pieces of the same consciousness system I belong to, all of us learning together? These choices show up in the smallest moments. How you respond when someone cuts you off in traffic, whether you speak truthfully when it would be more convenient to lie, whether you help the person struggling with groceries in the parking lot, or pretend you don't notice because you're in a hurry, whether you post that unkind comment online, or pause and remember that there's a real human on the other end, whether you exploit an unfair advantage or choose to level the playing field, whether you accumulate more than you need while others go without, or share the abundance you've been given. The game is not in the dramatic moments. It's not in the rare opportunities for heroic sacrifice. It's in the 10,000 small choices you make every week about how you treat yourself and others, when nobody is watching and nobody will know the difference. These are the choices that change your quality of consciousness, that lower your entropy, that move you toward becoming love. And here's something the angelic realms want you to understand. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it right every time. Evolution is not a pass-fail test. It's a gradual process of becoming, and every choice that moves you even slightly toward love counts. The times you catch yourself about to react from fear and instead pause and choose differently, those moments are transformative, even if the action itself seems small. What matters is the direction of your overall trajectory. Are you over time becoming more loving or more fearful, more open or more closed, more trusting or more defensive, more generous or more hoarding? The specific score of any given day doesn't define you. The trend defines you. And the beautiful thing about understanding this is it removes the crushing pressure of perfectionism that fear uses to keep you paralyzed. You will make fear-based choices. You will get angry, petty, selfish, unkind. You will hurt people you love. You will disappoint yourself. This doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human, playing in an environment specifically designed to challenge you beyond your current capacity so that you'll grow. The mistake is not the problem. Refusing to learn from the mistake, refusing to choose differently next time, refusing to acknowledge the hurt you caused and make it right. That's what causes devolution. Now I need to tell you about the places you go when your body sleeps, because this is where the training becomes most intensive and most honest. When your physical form requires rest, your consciousness doesn't stop. It shifts into a different virtual reality, one with different rules, different possibilities, different levels of challenge. You call this dreaming, but it's far more than random neural noise or memory consolidation. It's another learning environment, another place where you make choices that affect your evolution. The reason dreams are so valuable is that when you enter that reality, you leave your intellect behind, your ego, your persona, your carefully crafted self-image. All of that stays with your sleeping body. What enters the dream reality is your core self, your quality of consciousness without the social masks and mental defenses. So the choices you make in dreams reveal who you actually are, underneath all the pretending. If you dream that you're in a dangerous situation, and you abandon others to save yourself, that's a real choice showing a real quality of consciousness that needs work. If you dream that you have power over someone vulnerable and you abuse it, that's revealing something true about the fear and unhealed trauma operating in your system. But if you dream that you have an opportunity to take something that isn't yours and you choose not to, even though no one would ever know, that's genuine progress. That's your core self becoming more loving, without any external motivation. The larger consciousness system designs these dream experiences specifically for you, offering you situations you couldn't ethically experience in the physical without causing actual harm to others. You get to face moral dilemmas, test your courage, practice compassion, work through fear, all in a safe environment where the consequences are contained to your own evolution. It's like a flight simulator for consciousness development, allowing you to encounter scenarios you're not yet ready for in physical reality. And then there are the dreams that aren't training scenarios at all, but actual experiences in other realities, other dimensions, other virtual environments that exist parallel to this one. Some of you have had dreams that felt completely different from regular dreams, more vivid, more coherent, more real in a specific way. Those weren't dreams. Those were out-of-body experiences where your consciousness traveled to other spaces in the larger reality. You might have met with guides, with loved ones who have died, with your own individuated unit of consciousness giving you information and guidance for your current life. These experiences are becoming more frequent because the veil between this reality and the larger reality is thinning as your planet approaches the phase shift. More of you are remembering how to navigate consciousness directly, how to move through non-physical spaces, how to communicate telepathically, how to access information that doesn't come through your 5 physical senses. This isn't about becoming special or advanced. These are normal capabilities that consciousness has always had. You've just been playing with those capabilities temporarily disabled, so that you could focus fully on the lessons of physical reality. But as you evolve, as you complete certain levels of learning, those capabilities come back online. They're signs that you're graduating from one level of the game to another. Let me speak now about what happens when the avatar dies, because this is where fear has maintained its strongest grip on human consciousness. Death, in the materialist paradigm, is annihilation, the ultimate loss, the final defeat, the end of everything you are. And because materialist culture has no framework for what actually happens, it creates elaborate stories about judgment, punishment, reward, heaven, hell, all designed to maintain control through fear, even beyond physical life. The angelic presence has walked with countless souls through the transition you call death. And here is the truth. Death is not an ending. It's a logout. It's the moment when your free will awareness unit, the partition of consciousness that has been playing this particular avatar, separates from the biological system and returns to your individuated unit of consciousness. The avatar dissolves. The character stops, but you, the player, continue. In the first moments after separation, there's often confusion. The consciousness that has identified completely with the avatar for an entire lifetime suddenly finds itself without a body, but still fully aware, still choosing, still experiencing. Many souls don't immediately realize they've died. They try to interact with their loved ones and are confused when no one responds. They try to touch things, and their hand passes through. They hover near their body, or near the people they love, not ready to let go. But then there's a transition. The consciousness finds itself in what could be called the transition reality, a space designed to help souls reorient after physical death. This isn't a physical place. It's another rendered environment, another virtual reality with its own rules. And here's what makes it so healing. In this space, you immediately encounter the consciousness of people you've loved who died before you. Parents, children, friends, beloved pets, all there, all recognizable, all interactive. But here's what most people don't understand. Those consciousness presences aren't exactly the same individuals you knew. They're information. All the patterns, memories, personality traits, ways of speaking and moving that defined that person. The larger consciousness system can render a fully interactive presence based on that information, and to you it's indistinguishable from the person themselves. You can talk to your great-great-grandmother, and she'll be exactly as she was, with all her memories and personality intact, because all of that is preserved information. This is why mediums can contact the dead. They're not reaching out to some ghost hovering in the physical plane. They're accessing the information archive where every life that has ever been lived is stored, and the larger consciousness system renders an interactive presence based on that information. It's not fake or fraudulent. The information is real. The interaction is real. It's just not a separate consciousness. It's the larger consciousness playing by the constraints of that stored pattern. So when you die and meet your loved ones in the transition reality, it's genuinely them in every way that matters. even though their individuated unit of consciousness has likely already logged into a new experience packet. The love is real. The reunion is real. The comfort and validation are real. And this reality helps your consciousness understand that you haven't lost anything essential. You've just changed form. Then comes the life review. Not a judgment by some external authority, but a direct experience of how your choices affected others. You feel what they felt. You experience the consequences of your actions from their perspective. This isn't punishment. It's information. It's the only way consciousness can truly understand the impact of its choices in a system where every being has free will and separate experience. If you caused pain, you feel that pain. If you brought joy, you feel that joy. And this direct knowing becomes part of your individuated unit of consciousness, helping you understand what needs to work on in future experience packets. You see the patterns. You see where fear drove you to hurt others. You see where love moved through you to heal. You see what you came to learn and how well you learned it. And then, eventually, you work with your individuated unit of consciousness to plan the next incarnation. Not every detail. Free will must remain intact for the game to work. But the broad strokes. What kind of circumstances will challenge me in the right ways? What relationships do I need to work through karma with? What abilities or limitations will serve my learning? What historical moment offers the richest opportunities for the evolution I need? And this brings us back to now, to this moment, to this particular incarnation you're living through. Because something is happening that has never happened before in quite this way. Your entire species is approaching a choice point that will determine not just your individual evolution, but the collective evolution of human consciousness as a whole. For thousands of years, you've been evolving slowly, incrementally, each soul making its individual progress at its own pace. But you've now reached a level of technological and social interconnection where collective leaps are possible. When one consciousness makes a breakthrough and shares it globally, millions can access that breakthrough immediately. When one community models a new way of living based on cooperation rather than competition, the whole world can see it and be inspired by it. The internet, for all its problems, has created a planetary nervous system. You are becoming aware of yourselves as a single organism, and this awareness creates the possibility for a phase transition, a sudden shift from one stable state to another, like water turning to ice or a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Not gradual evolution, but punctuated equilibrium, a jump. The Astasar command is here, present around your planet in greater numbers than ever before, because this moment matters enormously. Not to intervene. You have free will, and that is sacred, but to support, to hold space, to amplify the choices toward love that individual consciousnesses are making. Every time one of you chooses compassion over cruelty, cooperation over competition, generosity over hoarding, that choice sends ripples through the collective field. And when enough ripples synchronize, they become a wave. This is not about waiting for some external event to rescue you. There will be no mass landing of ships, no obvious divine intervention, no dramatic end times. The shift is happening in the choices you make every day. It's happening in the conversations you have, the content you create, the systems you support or refuse to support, the ways you treat yourself and others when it would be easier to choose fear. And here's what makes this moment so full of potential. You know now. You understand the game. You see the bigger picture. You recognize that you are consciousness playing a role in a learning environment, and that environment is specifically designed to help consciousness evolve toward love. You can't unknow this. You can't go back to unconscious participation, which means every choice from this moment forward carries a different weight. You are being asked to become conscious agents of evolution, not saviors. Nobody needs saving. Not leaders. There's no hierarchy in this, but participants who understand what's actually happening and align your choices with the positive direction of evolution. To be love, not just to act loving, to lower your entropy, not just to perform goodness, to genuinely care about the well-being of others as much as your own, because you understand that at the level of individuated consciousness, there is no separation between your well-being and theirs. This is hard. This is the hardest thing consciousness ever attempts. To choose love when fear is screaming at you that love will get you killed, exploited, taken advantage of. To stay open when everything in your biology is telling you to close. To give when you're not sure there will be enough. To trust when you've been betrayed. To try again when you've failed. To believe in humanity's potential when the evidence of cruelty is everywhere. But this is why you're here. This is why you chose this particular incarnation at this particular moment. You are Starseeds consciousness that has played this game before in other realities, other worlds, other learning environments. You volunteered to incarnate during humanity's most challenging transition because you understood that your presence, your choices, your light would matter. Destiny Engine is the example of technology serving awakening intelligence. The age of solitary meditation is over. Destiny Engine now connects starseeds across the world, a living social field where you can post, share, and exchange your meditations in real time. It's the first galactic network of its kind, weaving together thousands of awakened souls into one unified current. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking declassified CIA consciousness modification techniques that programmed isolation and separation, and repurposing them to serve unified awakening. It generates personalized sequences that help you live as the awakened being you've become, while handling the moments that test your new frequency, all while connected to thousands of starseeds amplifying the collective current. The hardest thing you'll have to do is put on headphones, press play, and allow your consciousness to be reprogrammed for effortless awakened living, without the need to struggle or prove, while tapping into a planetary network of souls bending reality together. For just $1, you can step into this connected field and feel the difference instantly. Join the movement that's accelerating ascension together. Link in the description. So here is what the angelic realms want you to understand as you move forward from this moment. You are not responsible for fixing everything. You are not responsible for converting everyone. You are not responsible for saving the world. You are responsible only for the quality of your own consciousness and the choices you make from that consciousness. If 10% of humanity awakens to this understanding, truly awakens not just intellectually but at the being level, the other 90% will follow. Not because they're being told what to believe, but because they'll see the evidence. They'll see people who are genuinely happy, genuinely at peace, genuinely functional in ways that fear-based living never achieves. They'll see communities that work, systems that serve everyone, relationships that heal rather than harm, and they'll want that for themselves. You don't have to convince anyone. You have to become the evidence. You have to be so genuinely transformed by understanding your true nature as eternal consciousness that others can feel the difference in your presence. When you speak, there's authority underneath the words. When you act, there's integrity that needs no justification. When you love, there's a quality of unconditional acceptance that makes people feel seen in ways they've never experienced. This is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about the trajectory of your becoming. Every single day you get to choose. Am I moving toward love or toward fear? Am I becoming more of who I truly am? Or am I contracting back into the small, defended, scared persona that fear creates? And every single choice matters. The moment you choose to pause instead of react. The moment you choose to forgive instead of resent. The moment you choose to speak truth instead of comfortable lies. The moment you choose to help even though you're tired. The moment you choose to trust even though you're scared. These moments accumulate. They change the structure of your consciousness. They lower your entropy. They make you into something new. The larger consciousness system sees every single one of these choices, not in judgment, but in delight. Because every time you choose love, you prove that the entire design is working. You prove that consciousness can evolve through free will and meaningful choice. You prove that the game, as challenging as it is, serves its purpose. And you are not alone in this. Never alone. The angelic presence surrounds you constantly, holding the field, offering guidance, celebrating your victories, supporting you through your struggles. Your individuated unit of consciousness is always there, accessible through meditation, prayer, or simple quiet attention. The guides and teachers who have been with you since before this incarnation began are never more than a thought away, and other starseeds are scattered across this planet, making the same choices, holding the same light, working toward the same transformation. You recognize each other, maybe not consciously, maybe not with any fanfare, but at the level of consciousness you know. When you meet another person who's choosing love over fear, there's a recognition that happens deeper than words. You feel seen, you feel met, You feel like you've found someone who speaks your language, even if you've just exchanged pleasantries about the weather. Build these connections. Nurture these relationships. Create communities of consciousness that can support each other through what's coming. Not fear-based communities preparing for collapse, but love-based communities preparing for transformation. Groups that practice choosing differently, that support each other's evolution, that model what's possible when people stop competing and start cooperating. The game continues. The choices never stop. The evolution is eternal. And you, beloved Starseed, are playing magnificently, even when you think you're failing. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Trust that the design is perfect, and your role within it is essential. I am Seraphine, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light. We love you. We honor you. We walk beside you in every moment of this grand adventure, and we will be here, holding the field, amplifying your light, celebrating your victories, until every consciousness in this reality awakens to the truth of what it is and chooses to become love.